Hello, good morning. Andy at Content Cal here. Thank you so much again for joining yet another monthly roundup. And there's a lot coming your way over the next 45-50 minutes or so. Good morning, Louise. Thanks for joining. That's as usual. Let's light up the chat. So where you're joining from, etc. There's always really good conversation that happens in the chat. Morning, Eric. So yeah, always a really nice way to start the day as well, to feel some kind of interaction going on. Feel free to connect, share LinkedIn profiles, etc. Because, you know, we're all here to learn and educate about social media, and others quite often, you know, have great input to add on the things that Luann and I will talk about. And as per usual, this session is being recorded. So if you need to drop off, it's half term, you need to tend to the kids. You'll hear my kids in the background, no doubt, in a moment. So yeah, don't worry about doing that. You're going to get the recording anyway. And also, because we'll be going through lots of updates, trends and changes, don't feel compelled you need to do every one of these or need to jump on something else. The idea of this session is to give you a bit of context around what's happening and hopefully give you some new ways and avenues that you can explore and expand your social media strategy. Anyway, that's enough waffle for me to begin with. Luann, hello. For those that don't know you already, do you want to do a quick intro as well?
I will do, yeah. It's come around really quickly again, hasn't it? So I know February is supposed to be a short month, but where is 2022 going? It's flying by. I'm in the Cotswolds. It's cold and wet this morning. I'm a marketing consultant, have been for over 20 years working in marketing, spend most of my day on social media, understanding what's happening, helping companies understand what's happening and keeping up with all the changes. I train, I teach, I consult, and I have a roundup social media website called thelighthouse.social if you need to keep up with these updates on a daily, weekly basis.
Love it. Wonderful. And as you know, I'm from Content Cal, and this is what it looks like. Anyway, with that, let's start with some trends, because our favorite bit of data came out, and this was just typically after we did the January roundup. Just literally after that, we saw our favorite report from Data Portal, Global Web Index, and Hootsuite, and We Are Social. Lots of different data comes into this, but we love this. This is our favorite. So we're going to go through some of the key takeaways from this. It's like a 300 slide deck. So we've managed to cut through all of the noise and tell you the things that you really need to know from a social media perspective. So firstly, social media usage over time, yet again in double-digit growth. As you can see here, year over year, another 10% growth. What that 10% growth has meant, 424 million new users joined social and started using social media monthly actively. So that's incredible to see the growth still at double digits. You know, as you can see, you know, growth was obviously massive, then tailed off a little bit, and we thought we might have seen some kind of post-lockdown correction, but we haven't seen that. And I think the real kind of killer statistic here is that now active social media users, so as I said, using at least once a month, now 4.62 billion, 58% of the world's population. And realistically, there's not much more headroom for social media to grow now, right? Because it's nearly the same proportion of overall internet users across the world. So pretty much will be capped out. So I don't expect to see any more double-digit growth. And as fact, I think what we're getting to is a point, you know, this isn't a negative thing. It's a point of saturation where social media is so ubiquitous. Some of the crazy growth that we've seen, we'll be discussing with Facebook later on, some of the incredible growth will naturally hit some form of tipping point. So I don't know what your take is on all of this, Luann.
Yeah, this is absolutely our go-to stats whenever planning, presenting, looking for data. It's great to see that there's still so much growth on this, but what we will be seeing throughout this presentation is that even though it's kind of growing overall, things are shifting around between these platforms, between format types and usage and demographics and things like that. So it's great to see the big picture, but we are going to dive into those and see how things are changing across this population.
Good point. And talking about diving into those, so these are the world's most used social platforms. Facebook, and despite some corrections that we'll talk about in a little bit, still massive, still nearly 3 billion monthly active users just across Facebook. Then YouTube has been a big grower over the course of the last year over year. That's 500 million. new people have joined and actually started using YouTube. So I'm always very buoyant about YouTube, but this is kind of data that really reflects that. Instagram, 1.5 billion, so really strong performance. I jump over WhatsApp just because, you know, we're thinking about social channels really for marketing purposes, really, and reaching audiences. So I kind of discount WhatsApp from that perspective. Wechat, you'll notice some platforms that aren't native to the Western world, so we'll gloss over that one. But then that puts TikTok at 1 billion, and you can see TikTok incredible growth, overtaken over the last year Facebook Messenger. And I probably expect when the time we look at this again this time next year, I expected to have seen them overtake Instagram as well. You'll see also a couple of other things just to call out. Snapchat has seen some incredible growth that we'll talk about in a little more detail later on. 20% year-over-year growth. We don't often think about Snapchat, not often in the media anymore, but they're doing some wonderful things. LinkedIn's conspicuous by its absence because they don't report monthly active users, but we do have some data specifically to LinkedIn coming later on. But something else that's interesting to counter this with is some of people's favorite social platforms. So this is actually based on survey data, whereas the previous slide is all based on actual usage numbers reported from the platform. I think this is actually quite useful guidance when we think about what are the platforms that users turn to first when they're going to consume social media content. So this actually sometimes tells, you know, as interesting a story as the overall numbers do. So whilst WhatsApp's still the preference, Insta, Facebook, then TikTok being the top 3. So I'm not going to go on through all the data in this, but I'm going to pause to see what your thoughts are.
I think the interesting thing is, I agree with you on the previous slide where you kind of went, oh, I'll gloss over WhatsApp because it kind of is, it is a social media platform because it's part of Meta, but at the same time, it's very different from the experiences that we're using on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Defining favorite, I always want to dive behind this and go, favorite for what? Favorite for what purposes? For work, for communicating with friends, for finding out about brands, all of which we have got some data on. But yeah, kind of favorite for what? And I love that WhatsApp is top. I think it's really interesting that WhatsApp is top because it is going back to kind of personalized one-to-one communications, which at the end of the day is actually how we do business and engage most with our friends and family. I'd also like to see this bar chart split up by demographics, because I think that would be significantly different across different age groups.
Talking of demographics though, Luann.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
There you go. So so Facebook and Insta being the top 2 typically, as you can see the preferences within those age groups. So this once again gives us a bit of a clue as to those individuals that we're targeting, males, females, certain age demographics. What would be their platform that they would turn to first? They'll typically be across and have, you know, monthly usage across most of the platforms, but where do they go to first to consume their content? And I think that's quite telling actually, because it helps us kind of think about our strategy. Insta is more female orientated and younger orientated. Still, you know, same thing here when we're talking about Instagram for male users. So still the most used amongst 16 to 24. Then as the male demographic ages a little bit, then it's more about Facebook. So that's some interesting and some telling statistics around Facebook and Insta. But some of the things that I find most telling is the time spent. So time spent on each of these platforms. I'm only going to call out a couple of things on this slide. YouTube, unbelievable. So that is the thing that really, you know, makes YouTube quite a force to be reckoned with in the social media space. Not only have they seen 500 million monthly active user growth, as we spoke about, but the time spent on platform trumps everything else. So that's super, super powerful. So we won't go over the other platforms, but what's also very telling is the amount of time people spend on TikTok. This is averaged across the world. So you can, if you want to look at this data yourself, you can look at this from a geographical perspective as well, but this is kind of worldwide just to give us a view. So yeah, TikTok, same as Facebook and nearly double what Instagram is. That's telling, and that really is kind of driving the focus behind Instagram, why they're just going on an all-out feature war, trying to copy TikTok, because they're desperate to try and get more of their users to spend more time on the platform. And that really is Instagram's biggest risk area at the moment. And talking of TikTok, I thought I would do a bit of a kind of zoom in on TikTok specifically, because the UK spends more time on TikTok consuming TikTok content than anywhere else in the world. Who would have thunk it? UK, the top of a chart. So very interesting, because then actually in the UK, we spend more time consuming content on TikTok than any other platform. It's above YouTube. So that does tell us something very compelling to think about and consider for our strategies. So I'm going to take a pause there. What do you reckon, Luann?
It's hours of time, isn't it? Yet someone is, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat as well. So yes, there is lots more data. This is a 300 slide deck. We're not showing you even half of it, or we're showing you just a few slides of it today, so please do go and look at the full slide deck. And yes, Samantha, it does actually say that this is data just from Android phones, and we know that there's a lot of iPhone users on TikTok, but it's just looking at the numbers and how huge this is. And we could probably wrap up today's entire updates with one word in terms of the format of content that is really what social media is all about right now, and it's the TikTok format. And Reels is the biggest changes that's going on. So this is significant.
Agreed. So let's go through some other kind of key data points, and then we're going to go into some of the features. So the high level story of this slide is that we're seeing demographics, like every time we look at this data, shift increasingly to the right. So whilst 20 to 29-year-olds still dominates from us looking across the whole globe, across all social media platforms, still dominates 20 to 29, what we're seeing is increasing percentages grow to 30 plus, 40 plus, etc. So it's really important to think about, actually, social media is 58% of the world's population. By the kind of very nature of it expanding so much across the globe, it means that naturally we're seeing much more broadened demographics as well. So failed not to mute my phone. Never mind. So average number of social platforms used, and I think this data on its own isn't very interesting, but when you go underneath it, it is. So worldwide, typically the average user has 7.5 social media profiles, right? So let's just call it 7 for argument's sake. Naturally, people have accounts across multiple different channels and platforms. And as we've seen in the data already, people might be monthly active on other platforms, and they might have a certain favorite platform that they go to that we've already discussed. But what this means actually is that if we want to reach our audience, we need to be thinking in a multi-channel perspective. I say this quite often anyway, but naturally our audience are across all platforms. And when we talk about this is my favorite and most nerdy slide. Luann, you did a much better take on this, to be honest. But
yeah,
the key message here really is that less than 1% of all of the social media networks, less than 1% of the users are unique to that platform. Your users are everywhere. So the kind of bit that I want to have as my main takeaway from the last two slides really is that we shouldn't be thinking about, our audience are just on TikTok, our audience are just on Instagram. It's just simply not the case anymore. Your audience are across every platform, and we need to be thinking about how we can reach them across multi-platforms. And that really, I'm not saying you need to be on every one, but we need to be considering about how we can publish our content far and wide to give it maximum reach. Because even in the case of LinkedIn, for example, right? If LinkedIn is our main go-to platform, and I still advocate having a platform you major on, and Luann, you probably have some thoughts on this for sure, because you and I sometimes come at some different angles. But like, if we looked at LinkedIn as the final thing I'll say, 83% of LinkedIn users are also on Instagram, and nearly 50% of LinkedIn users are also on TikTok. It just goes to show, like, sometimes when I look at B2B strategies, people are like, oh, I only focus on LinkedIn and Twitter because we're B2B. That I just want to change that mindset, because it's just simply not true. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and allow you to speak now.
I'll get on mine. We've kind of said it before, and these overlaps are really interesting, but there's a couple of points that always sit in my mind here, is that we talk about where are our audience, and we have to remember that it's not always just about our audience, it's about those people that influence them as well. And what always comes to mind is I do some work in the higher education sector. It is not just about the 17-year-old that is applying to university to go this September. Their parents are involved, their school teachers are involved, there's lots of other people. And while that 17-year-old may be on TikTok, the mum is in a Facebook group, and the careers tutor is in somewhere else. So we can never just actually put anything into isolation. Whether we use all of these platforms ourselves, how many platforms we use, we can't do it all. Even the amount of time you and I spend on this, Andy, we can't do all of them. So we probably would pick a preference or one or two preferences, which depends on our own time, our resources, our own focuses as well. But as much as we may consider ourselves more active on perhaps one or two than another, doesn't mean that we're not there and we're not using it. So my example is that I probably post more on LinkedIn than I do on Twitter, but I use Twitter to understand what's going on in the world, what people are saying, what people are thinking, and then use that insight for my content across other platforms. And Pinterest is another great example where you may not be active, but if you are in retail or home or something like that, and you want to know what the trends are and the topics and the creativity, you can go to that platform, gather insights, and then use that elsewhere where your audience are. So people are also using different platforms for different purposes.
Yeah, really good examples. Really good examples. So this is something else that I just wanted to call out because this is very interesting, right? So the growth of social media advertising. Typically, these sessions are always focused on organic, but we sometimes touch on ads. The increase in advertising spend is absolutely massive in the light of all of the kind of challenges that are facing social media ads at the moment, in the light of iOS 14.5, reducing targeting, and the fact that more and more people are spending money is really interesting. And if you remember back to last month's roundup, we spoke about the fact that costs of advertising are increasing because more and more people are coming to advertise on social platforms, whilst the costs per click are going up. The actual click-through rates are staying static and actually dropped by 20% over the last year. So we've got a bit of a challenge on our hands to think about how we leverage social media advertising. There's lots of opportunity, but we need to be thinking, my main kind of call to action would be to think beyond just putting ads into the Facebook feed, into the Instagram feed, thinking about like the other channels we could use, like be it TikTok, be it Instagram stories, Instagram Reels ads. Those kind of things give us much bigger bang for buck. But that's a really interesting landscape that's happening across social media ads. But social media ads clearly are hugely popular because one of the key sources of brand discovery. In fact, the fourth most popular source of brand discovery is ads on social media. But the thing that's above that, which really is the key to everything we do on social, is word of mouth recommendations. And that really is our opportunity. Everything that you just said, Luann, about like establishing the influencing factors across the broader perspective. And that's really the opportunity we have at social, to kind of light a fire under word of mouth. So I'm going to take a pause again and give you a bit of a chance to input on this one, Luann.
Yeah, again, going back to the last slide in terms of increased advertising spend, I think some of that is also in the context of the world and how the world has changed, and how, what's more effective. Everyone, or a large percentage of people, do have a phone in their pocket and are online perhaps more than they are seeing outdoor or cinema advertising, perhaps, pre 2 years ago. I think we're also seeing within those trends that if, again, we were to kind of split up that green column, that spend is shifting from Facebook and Instagram across to TikTok as well. So there's a lot of experimentation with TikTok ads, particularly by businesses at the moment. I was quite surprised by ads on TV being so high on this one in sources of brand discovery. I don't think we've seen that on there before, and interestingly, TV shows and films further down, because I do believe that TV watching trends have changed significantly, and where that fits, maybe it's TV as a whole, working on that. But absolutely, it's about word of mouth. And again, we would also see a shift in these bars if we were to be doing this by country, by demographics, by platform as well. So it's good to see the big picture, but we want to dive in, and you've already got it on the next slide, haven't you?
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is if you zero in on social, because this is the real thing that we want to take out of this session, right? It's everything pertaining to social. And exactly as Luann says, like, you tell the future. So yeah, 16 to 24 year olds rather, pretty much all of them, 50%, they're going to social first to discover brands. And as you can see, there's not a huge drop off in terms of age range. Also, interestingly, skews more female orientated as well, if that's relevant to your target audience. But yeah, as you can see, as consumers evolve, increasingly turning towards social to discover new products and services. So with that, you get a bit of a break from my voice for a second.
I wanted to keep talking. I wanted to keep talking data because there's so much in that deck. I have put the link in the chat. It's datareportal.com. We have really just skated over the tip of some of that data in there. So do take some time. But yes, let's look at the platforms and Meta. And yeah, we've got some more stats. I love benchmarks. I'm always asked by clients or in training courses, what do we expect? What do we want? What's going to happen? My answer is always the answers are going to be in your own data. Try and set your own benchmarks and continually improve. But data like this set is always useful if you are planning, presenting, and need to give people guidelines on what's going on. And it's fascinating here that this latest update has actually gone a bit more granular in terms of post types and benchmarks. And we'll see that for Instagram in a bit as well, that the average Facebook post engagement is 0.07%, slightly higher for photos, lower for videos, which is slightly surprising, but maybe that's because of how long it takes to watch the video. Links we've talked about before as well, and general status updates. So always useful. And what we need to be bearing in mind now, going back to that initial slide of, the market is growing overall, it's getting so much more granular within each platform and within each content type. There's a lot more to do.
Definitely. And worthwhile noticing that Facebook one when we look at Instagram engagement benchmarks in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I could summarize the whole hour today in one word, which is Reels. And yes, Facebook Reels is now a thing. Their news came out, I think it was 2 days ago, of how it is now rolling out globally. More people, everyone has access to Reels now. It's on Facebook, testing different format lengths. It's a thing. We can't avoid it. That is their focus, and different ways of using this and creating those Reels as well. So sharing them, if you create them in Facebook, over to Instagram, creating them from highlights on Instagram as well. So they're just making it a lot more accessible to repurpose what you've been doing into this Reels format as well. So making it easier for you to give it a go.
Yeah, and definitely that repurposing bit is a really important thing, as you say, Joanne. Like when we look at those audience overlaps, we're talking about being on multiple platforms, things that make it easy for us to be across multiple platforms, or at least publish our content across multiple platforms like this. Yeah. It's useful. There you go.
This is probably the headline story, though, isn't it? Although actually there's a similar story from one of the other platforms, which you'll cover later, Andy, is that users have declined for the first time in its 18-year history. This will be absolutely mortifying for Zuckerberg, I'm sure. We haven't seen it come through in the stats yet, but active users are declining. Big news.
Yeah. I don't think it's a massive issue. Some people say, "Oh, Facebook is dying." It's not, but naturally, it's like they can't grow much bigger. So it's not going to. It's not going to grow any further. But and their revenues still hit record levels. So most normal businesses, there we go. That's amazing. But the declining trust and the challenge of around advertisers and advertising on the platform is definitely, going to give Facebook some pause for concern. That's for sure. Is it going to go anywhere anytime soon? No. But I think the effectiveness of Facebook as a marketing channel is definitely, I'm definitely questioning it more now. That's for sure.
I think again, it's also hard to kind of just say back in the day when we used to put social media into box, I think it's now again hard to put the whole platform into a box, because thinking about, and this will be again different for generations and how they're using it. I use the news feed to post updates about what I'm doing and things a lot less than I did 3 years ago, 5 years ago. The news feed as such isn't that interesting to me anymore, but groups are increasingly valuable. And I find out what my peers are up to and what my local community is up to and things like that. So I think it's again quite hard to kind of just put an umbrella over a platform now. We've got to almost look at what areas of this platform are people finding most useful and switching around.
Agreed.
Instagram, very similar. Again, some more stats. And I love, again, that this time we're getting some stats on stories, we're getting some stats on reels. So again, it kind of supports that. We've got to look at each format in a different way now and plan our content and try and test different things. 1 billion people are using Instagram, have the opportunity to see ads on Instagram stories now. I think someone's asked a question about that. I'll come back to it in a second. A huge reach, slightly more female than male, but not a huge amount in it. It is a really good way to be reaching people. If you're not yet running your stories, ads in stories, you should. Reels, I think this is the first time we've had data in this data report around the audience of Reels. It'll be interesting to compare this to TikTok data as well. So 675 million people could be reached with ads within Instagram Reels, which is huge. Slightly more male than female on Instagram Reels.
So very interesting. And I think this just goes back to the point of experimenting. Luann, you've already called it out, like the formats, but certainly with formats regarding ads, this can be a nice way to kind of compensate for increasing costs to advertise in the feed on both Insta and Facebook. So using different formats to mitigate those cost per click and also click-through rates issues.
Yeah, there's not one size image that's going to fit all your ads now. You've got to reformat your images. Audience profile, not surprising that it's slightly younger on Instagram. We've seen this before, but still quite a good spread across the age groups and between male and female as well. Match this up to your own customer profiles to see if it's the right platforms for you to be focusing on.
Good point.
Engagement benchmarks, again, as I said, to Facebook, always good to have these benchmarks. And I think we've said it before, we can quite clearly see over on the right-hand side that carousel posts are more engaging than single image posts. So I think that's been the case for quite a while now. Lower engagement on video, which I think will change. I don't know whether they're perhaps splitting out one type of video from Reels in that data.
On video, the interesting thing about this is that video was, if we looked at this last quarter, video engagement rates was below photo posts. It's now above, of which the next slide will kind of talk to what's happening with video in a second. But the other thing to call out here is that if you remember, the Facebook engagement rate for all post types was 0.07%. 1.94% for Instagram is still not amazing. Still means 98% of people aren't going to engage because they won't see your content. But it does kind of put a stark comparison between the opportunity of Instagram for organic engagement versus Facebook. So very stark. But that video thing is very interesting. I'll grab this one actually really quickly because this is something that we saw happen over the last 2 weeks. I posted about it before, and I don't like talking about hacks, right? I don't like coach. I don't like short-termism, basically. But this is a really clear indication of Instagram's intent, because we've been saying for the last few months that they are focused on becoming a video-first entertainment platform. And this is the first time that we've actually seen the evidence of that shaking out within the algorithm and how the algorithm is prioritizing content. So some of these big meme accounts that have typically just kind of post single images, they're increasingly focusing, even if they've got an image, just turning that image into a micro 1-second video. That has a kind of a compounding effect, because one, it's reflected as a video, so it gets weighted higher in the algorithm, seemingly now. And of course, it's such a micro video, and there seems to be no minimum length for videos right now. Caveat, this may change. But it means that video cycles so quickly, and the view count ramps up like this, 1.7 million views in this example, right? So you'll see that that is a signal to the algorithm to go, all right, well, that's an incredibly valuable video. Look how many times it's been watched, and people are watching it all the way through, because that is another measure that the algorithm uses, that videos have to be watched to the full duration and the full length. And that's the key thing. So it's hacking the algorithm. The algorithm will get smarter and compensate for this. but it does give you a bit of an idea of, like, you know, very acutely what Instagram are up to. Don't know if you've got anything to add on that, Luann.
Like you, I'm not a fan of hacks, but I also do love when people that work in social media share things like this, and everyone goes away and tries it and test it. So this does seem to be one that's important, and does, yeah, absolutely signal what Instagram's intent is all about. So yeah, sometimes it's good to see these things, but try and test it for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite telling, actually. Even one of the comments on this video is basically like, anyone else notice that all of this is happening? You know, so yeah, so clearly it's quite a thing. Anyway, back to you. Sorry.
Anyway, I was just going to say, I'd love to know if Instagram and Facebook, you know, all these platform engineers watch out for all of these things and then go, oh, we need to change something because they're one step ahead. You know, we shouldn't perhaps tell them what we're all finding out sometimes, but who knows if they are paying attention.
Yeah.
This update around lives goes back to the fact that we've talked about video content a lot over time, and how lives are increasingly important. People like live content, and the platforms are making it easier to do lives. And we all know, if you've done lives, you know that you sit there waiting for a little bit to see if anyone shows up and what happens, and that you get more people joining over time and in the replays. So actually the fact that you can now schedule it, let people know it's coming, and be prepared, means that hopefully you're going to get more people joining those lives too. Likes comes to stories. This is a nice one, isn't it? How much better is our inboxes going to be that they're not going to be full up of likes? It's always good to know that people are engaging in your content, but yeah, our Instagram inboxes can get quite full with these kind of notifications. So changing how likes on stories are all working is quite a nice change, I think. I've seen the pop up several times on my accounts over the last few days, so the feature is now there. Interaction on stories, yeah, you know, even though some of the focus has been on reels, stories are, you know, still there, still popular. Polls, interaction, using these stickers. Just keep an eye on what's in there when you're creating your stories, and use the opportunities that are available. Earlier question about kind of, you know, creating reels and repurposing content. This is another way of doing it. Nice hand image there, Andy, at the bottom of how to do this. So if you've saved your stories as highlights, you can now change those to reels. So another quick way to be creating this content that Instagram wants you to be playing with. And they are testing templating as well. So this is going to make the creation of reels a bit easier for some, particularly if you want your own brand style, you want your own formats for consistency, being able to use templates. We like templates, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that's going to lower the barriers to entry to get people doing short form video. And that's, as you can see from all these changes and tests, you know, it's where they're heading. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No. These are always in no particular order, by the way. So we do go backwards and forwards. And this is an example of just seeing how functionality from one platform and one area goes across to another. Pinning posts is something that's often forgotten. I've been talking to some clients this week around, you know, do you have a general housekeeping list of, is the banner photo up to date? Have I got a pinned post? Is it, you know, is it up to date? Do I need to change it? And, you know, that opportunity to kind of housekeep your profiles is quite important. And now we've got pinning posts on Instagram. That's another thing for that housekeeping list, and just to keep an eye on. Adding reels to your grid. This is, Instagram is changing all the time how they do things, isn't it? You know, you had Instagram TV that was in a different area, and then they took that off, had all the videos in the grid. It's nice to see that they're kind of trying to consolidate things into just one or two places, rather than too many different locations to go and be able to view and engage with content.
And it does change the dynamics of the grid. That's a lot of things. I haven't rolled this out yet, so there's a few things that we shared here that are in test, but just because Instagram are changing so rapidly. But of course, last month we showed that they were testing out, you can change the ordering of grid as well. So there's going to be a lot more opportunities that will come to the grid, I think.
Yeah. And back to reels. This is something that TikTok started doing, testing longer format reels. YouTube went from longer format and then had shorts. So I think this is all, it's a constant test, isn't it? Social media and what we're doing and creative formats. So looking forward to seeing how things change, whether we have 15-second formats, 90-second formats. You've got to try it and test it.
Yeah, I think just following the same trajectory as TikTok, really. Go from 30 seconds to 90, and now they're obviously TikTok are at 3 minutes now. So Reels will follow the same trajectory. And it does open up the creative opportunity. It's much easier to be, to do something interesting and compelling in 90 seconds than it is for 30 seconds, for example.
Yeah. This is if I see one thing that's in social media groups around kind of challenges for managers and, I've lost access, my admin's gone, how do I get back in? Can't get anyone to help. All these admin challenges behind the scenes with usernames and passwords and access, Instagram have now made it easier to get access back to your Instagram account if you need it.
Yeah, I thought I would add this one for this month because this is one for the social media managers. This is, if you know,
Yeah.
If you've ever been in that position of getting locked out of your accounts, that this is going to make life so much easier. Anyway,
yeah.
Twitter,
again, borrowing features from each other. We saw collabs on Instagram a while ago, being able to kind of co-create your content and tag each other in at the same time and show that it's a joint piece of content. Twitter are now testing this as well, as you can see in this example. So it's great if you are doing events like this where we both do it, that we can just kind of collaborate on our content and share that out, and for influencers as well.
Yeah, and everyone knows that. Say every month, every time we see a collabs feature, huge fan. Collaboration is key to success on social.
Yeah,
for sure. Love that.
Makes a huge difference. And while Facebook is declining, we saw some of these stats earlier, Twitter user growth is growing. They are monetizing. They've made more changes. Of course, they had a change in leadership last year as well. So I think we can expect a bit more to come out of Twitter over time as well, and really use this for the news agenda.
Yeah, so it looks like it's good to have some resurgence from Twitter. Actually, I mean, battered over the last few quarters, so that's encouraging.
Yeah. LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn have made a few changes to the ads platform, trying to make things easier over recent months. You now might see a boost button against content that is already on your company page. The self-service platform is there. You can use it. It is great for impressions. If you have a B2B audience, can be very targeted. It is growing. The year-on-year change in LinkedIn ad reach has been growing by 11%. So that's an extra 81 million people that you could be reaching via LinkedIn ads if you wanted to do it. Slightly more male in the demographic profile on LinkedIn versus female. Could be relevant for you, but here is the data to support your planning. Audience profile. I think this is quite a surprise to some people that actually it's in a younger group. You'd expect it to perhaps be slightly older because LinkedIn has been around longer than some of the other platforms and the workforce. But it's good to see that people are still joining LinkedIn, setting up their profiles and being really quite active on there. So quite a difference in terms of demographics and also male and female on the LinkedIn platform. And they hit just over 800 million users recently. This hasn't taken into account, though, the fact that they have withdrawn from China at the end of last year. So there's 56 million that will come off of the big platform, the main features. China now will have a lighter version that is just about careers. So I'm guessing LinkedIn are keeping that in the overall number, but there's 56 million that are kind of using a different version that is careers only. I know that we haven't got it on the slide deck because it was just last night that this was announced, but a new feature that LinkedIn have started talking about is their new podcasting network. So while they remove stories, they've been testing audio and the Clubhouse kind of route. They have just announced a podcasting network, which at the moment will share their own podcasts and some of their kind of influencer content, but really fascinating to see LinkedIn, a B2B platform, move into that area.
Interesting. Well, that's news to me. So thanks for
breaking news.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited for that. I'm definitely in for that. Very interesting. And look, you get featured on this one.
I did, thank you. But you did kind of do this on your own LinkedIn profile. So if you haven't seen it, what you need to do is go and visit Andy's profile and my profile and click on that bell button that is in the top right hand corner after the banner image, because that means that you will get notified of posts. It's kind of being able to flag up the people that you really want to see see their content come into your LinkedIn newsfeed. So I like that feature. Great if you need to follow key clients, key contacts, people within your organization, that you now have got that additional feature to kind of flag some of those people up with the bell icon.
Agreed. And also you might want to let some people know about that in your posts as well to encourage them to follow you. So yeah, I like that one.
And this was we mentioned this, I think it was just a couple of months ago, how LinkedIn have given freelancers some more options in terms of setting up their profile, being able to add their services. There's some new features on there. You can request reviews of your services on here. I know there was a question about this on your LinkedIn post around it, Andy, that it's about the services page, which is kind of really useful for freelancers. So if you haven't set this up yet, do have a look at it. And the fact that LinkedIn are gently adding some small features means it's hopefully going to become more valuable.
Definitely agree. Right. Okay. You know the usual.
I'm going.
You check the chat. I'm going to fire through over the next 9 minutes, probably a little bit less actually, the other social media networks, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So yeah, TikTok's advertising audience, you know, when we're comparing that to Reels, for example. So Reels advertising audience was 650 million, TikTok 884 million, so slightly broader reach on TikTok. Demographic, as we expect, shifts younger, which, you know, there's no huge surprises there, 18 to 24s, but you can see that this will steadily shift more on the right-hand side as well. So, so yeah, 25 to 34 still representing a large proportion. And in fact, 25 to 44, if you add both of these together, you'll see that 25 to 44, which is usually a kind of key purchasing age demographic, outnumbers 18 to 24. So just goes to show, like, there's increasing relevance in the demographic on TikTok. We've spoken about experimenting with advertising already. TikTok, to their credit, are making it easier to help people, well, help lower the barriers to getting active on TikTok, because there's a lot of kind of creative concern when it comes to, you know, doing TikToks. So actually here they've made it a lot easier by breaking it down into some advertising courses. Really important if we're looking at trying to maximize our cost per clicks and cost per acquisition, etc. TikTok are also promoting Duets, as you might be able to see on this screen here, where they're encouraging more use of this feature. As I've said this before, but I see Duets as one of the best opportunities for maximizing audience participation in our content. I see it as the evolution of engagement of content and where it's going. Whereas engagement we've typically classed as, you know, like, click, comment, etc. Whereas Duets, as a reminder, allows other people to take their own take on a video and basically play it side by side. So I think this requires a lot of creativity from businesses to unlock this, but I think this then has fantastic opportunities to generate user-generated content. So if you're a business and you filmed a TikTok of you doing something, let's just say you're a kind of e-commerce or shipping company, maybe you're packaging some of your products into a box and you recorded that as a video, encourage others to kind of do their own take or duet on it. Others could kind of try their best to interpret or mimic what you were doing in your video. And through that, you see trends spiral, you see content kind of, you get like a pyramid effect of lots of people creating content, and you generate a whole load of user generated content in the process. So I could waffle about this forever. Super powerful, but does require us thinking a bit more creatively rather. Scheduling TikTok lives, you know, I've spoken about live streaming, or we've spoken about live streaming for the last 3 months, because it's still the content format above all else that generates the biggest level of engagement. So above videos and feed, above carousels, etc., lives is the main provider of engagement, excuse me, across all the platforms. And as we've seen with Instagram, scheduling Instagram lives, same things happening on TikTok as well. TikTok was also the highest earning app as well. Just goes to show, and this isn't advertising revenue, this is consumers spending money on the platform, purchasing products, etc. So this really is the perfect example of social commerce, and you can see that TikTok are very much on the front foot when it comes to social commerce, that's for sure. Pinterest, looking at audiences and looking at in comparison with others, one of the most female orientated out of all the platforms. Not many updates this month, but they're going big into AR. They're going big on e-commerce. We've spoken about this loads over the past anyway. And if anyone's used the IKEA app, you'll be quite familiar with this kind of like augmented reality experience of placing furniture and products in your house. But it does make for a wonderfully seamless shopping experience where someone could be searching chair on Pinterest. And let's not forget, that's 95% of all searches on Pinterest are brand orientated. So looking for products, which is a super important thing if you're a B2C orientated business, particularly. So people can look at a chair, look at that, and then see exactly how that particular item will look in their room, and then make the purchase of that item without leaving Pinterest. It's a very powerful experience and provides great opportunity for e-commerce businesses. That being said, Pinterest usage growth is declining. It's not at pre-pandemic levels. And don't forget, Pinterest was one of the biggest growers throughout the course of the pandemic, hitting 33% annual growth. We're seeing a bit of a correction here. If that growth trend continues, then that would be cause for concern, because then it's going to reset to pre-pandemic levels, which would be bad news for Pinterest. So one to keep an eye on. Snapchat, once again, demographics, and what you'll see actually in the maturing of Snapchat is going more to the right-hand side again. So that 13 to 17-year-old demographic used to be the one that really was the driver of Snapchat. We've seen the demographic shift to the right. And actually, that 25 to 35-year-old demographic actually outnumbers 13 to 17-year-old for the first time. So once again, just a standard maturity curve of platforms where we see it becoming wider, more widely adopted across more broad demographics. They're also going big on AR. They have done since the dawn of time, and converting this into e-commerce. So in these examples where this is a kind of Pinterest lens, so try on glasses and make the purchase of those glasses. Now, that's always been quite a hard thing for most brands to achieve, because how do I make a lens? It's not like putting out a post on a social platform. This is a very different and more in-depth type of implementation of something on social, right? Making a lens, making your glasses try-onable. But they've just released this lens builder tool. So here, using this kind of widget, you can start to build in your own lenses into Snapchat. So if you or provide a product that is physical in nature, that people can try on and see what it's like in their own kind of physical surrounding, if that's your kind of thing and that's the kind of thing that you do, then the lens builder tool will be a massive help to you. Snapchat is also growing at 20% across the board, really strong daily active users in particular. It is another 30% bigger than Twitter in terms of daily active usage. Snapchat has incredible retention for encouraging people to come back day after day. So if you target that demographic, if you're e-commerce in particular, very consumer focused, then Snapchat is definitely worth some consideration. And this is just more of a side note, but it kind of paints an interesting picture as to potentially the future of social. Snapchat are always at the bleeding edge, so I quite like watching what Snapchat are doing. They're now beginning to share ad revenue with creators. They're beginning to recognize that the whole value of social media is in the people that are creating content in the platform, not the platform itself, because there's growing distrust over the control of big tech platforms from controlling attention and monetizing our attention through ads. So now Snapchat are flipping the model a bit, where they're starting to say, yeah, we still need to provide ads to drive it's our business model ultimately, but actually sharing that ad revenue with creators actually then compensates the creators, encourages them to come back to the platform. And of course, wherever the creators go, the community comes. And when the community comes, then that's where the money flows. So that's why there's a big war for those creators and bringing the talent to those platforms. YouTube demographics, most balanced of the lot. So you'll see YouTube having the highest usage amongst, the over 40s. So really encouraging if you want to focus on a slightly older demographic, but they really do run the gamut of all demographics. As you can see, it's the most flat curve out of all the demographics we see. Short form video is really the thing. And because all of the platforms are focusing so heavily on short form, that does give us an opportunity to start thinking platform, or start thinking format first rather. rather than thinking platform first, which we typically do, like are we on Facebook or are we on Twitter, etc., if we start to think format first, this will give us a bit more opportunity. And what I mean by that is thinking from a short form video perspective. If we can start to optimize our content for short form video, that gives us the opportunity to then share that content as a Facebook reel, Instagram reel, Snapchat spotlight, to share it as a YouTube short, to share it as a TikTok. So suddenly we get lots of opportunity when we start to think about our content on the basis of formats, because then we can reuse and repurpose those formats across different platforms. And as we said right at the start, thinking cross-platform is key to maximizing our audience reach. And one final point before we're bang on time for the Q&A, Reddit Talk has added some new features. Reddit is a brilliant platform for consuming knowledge and seeing what people are saying around a category. They're starting to go more into social, and they've got the kind of rival to Clubhouse, which they launched last year. They've just added a whole heap of new features to it as usage is growing. And with that, your summary of 6 things. Massive growth across all platforms. The impact and influential power of social continues to grow. It's not going anywhere. Facebook, I still have a bit of a question mark over it in general. Definitely share Luann's buoyancy around Facebook groups, but Facebook feeds and pages, I do have some question marks around the future of that for marketing purposes, both paid and organic, to be honest. Big changes ahead for Instagram. Instagram, as you can see, was kind of the main focal point for this session today. So many changes, so many tests. So we need to be on our toes. Like we're talking about that change in algorithm, that prioritize those micro videos. We need to be on our toes for that kind of stuff. Short form video will continue to grow. Thinking platform first will help us in that, as I've just been speaking about. Augmented realities, social commerce, social shopping, barriers are coming down to helping businesses kind of unlock that as an opportunity. And as we said, like social media ads is hitting an inflection point where, we're going to have to start rethinking our strategies. And Luann's already touched on it about we can't just create one asset and then bang that out as a social ad in a feed. We do need to think more about the different types of formats of our ads. And with that, let's go back to the studio for any questions that we have.
Well, more of a comment, Andy, is try-onable actually a word?
It's not. I definitely made that up. I can think of it. No, it's not.
That's right. People picked up on it. So that's interesting. I'm just about to pop a link in the chat because people have asked about LinkedIn ads and is there any case studies. LinkedIn have their own online learning course for ads that you can get certified for. I've been through it. It's really good because it has lots of kind of examples and case studies as you go through there. A question for you, Andy, would be about Reels and Content Cal. Can you publish Reels through Content Cal?
Not yet.
Is it coming?
Yeah. Give us some time for the Adobe stuff to net out, and you'll see that's it's going to be a big focus area for sure.
Cool. And just one other question which will be useful for us both to pick up on is that going back to the very beginning, almost an hour ago, around the use of WhatsApp and how people like WhatsApp and how a business is using WhatsApp. My experience of it being a business use is around customer service and using it as a channel for people to get in touch. You sometimes see it on their contact us pages, in DMs afterwards of WhatsApp, and get involved that way. So that's the main place I've seen WhatsApp used for business. Don't know if Andy, you've got any other examples.
No, I think that's the perfect example, to be honest. Yeah, we need to consider WhatsApp as a different part of a user journey, right? Because the rest of social, we're thinking about demand creation. We're trying to go broad to influence others and inspire others to hear about us for the first time, to trust us, etc., to create connection. So yeah, WhatsApp isn't in that. That's kind of more deeper connection, the conversion orientated element of it. Whereas typically on social, your main focus is top of the funnel, your awareness piece. And as you've seen already, I've just popped in that link for next month's update. So yeah, book in for next month and we will be here again. But yeah, any other questions?
No other questions, just lots of thank yous. Yeah, great to see people kind of commenting and getting involved in the chat as well. So yeah, there's always a lot to cover. There's a lot of data. Love all the questions in there, but you're going to have to go and dive into it after the session and see what's most relevant for you. So yeah, same again next month.
Absolutely. And yeah, we'll be talking about everything that happens on a weekly basis on our LinkedIn profiles. So if you go ahead and connect with Luann and myself, which you can find us on LinkedIn, talk about this all the time. And otherwise, thank you so much for giving up a bit of time. Thanks so much for joining yet again and making this feel such a welcoming, wonderful session. And your attention for 55 minutes of going quite deep into some detail. It takes some serious focus. So you need to pat yourself on the back for having that commitment. Otherwise, see you next month. And yeah, take care of yourself. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.